and I am delighted to be here. I have been in the entertainment industry, in the media industry for 30 years, and it's been a good industry for me, and the CMPA has always been great for me. But I have to say I'm here with my hat, not as a producer, but as chair of the RTA School of Media, and it is by far one of the most rewarding jobs that I've ever had to do. It is inspiring for many reasons. I think it's inspiring not just because the RTA School of Media has been around since the beginning for 60 years and was there with radio and continues to be emphasizing radio, and was there when television started. The first TV producers were there. It was always ahead of the game. It's always a great place to be. So it's not just because it was a great school, but because of these folks and their colleagues. The inspiration that I get at this stage of my career, every time I go in and realize that the answers are not simply based on the 30 years experience, but based on actually an engagement that 20-something-year-olds who are committed to media, just like we all still are, but with perhaps a different perspective of media than many of us have. Bit of a clean slate, a bit less jaded, a bit less concerned at the minute about exactly where the next immediate kind of return on investment is coming, but just the ability to dream, the ability to dare to live for the future and to say this is what Canadian media should be. So for somebody like myself, I go in and connect with these guys in a way that it makes me feel ready to dream again. And as was said earlier today, we are in a time of transition, and yet for these folks, it's not a time of transition, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a career in storytelling and media, and I'm thrilled to be part of what I consider to be one of the best schools in the world, at one of the best universities in the world, to let them flourish. So I'm hoping today we can share a little bit, they can share a little bit. My job here is just to try to facilitate some of their thoughts as where they're at, and maybe that clean slate and imagination will inspire some of us to actually go back to zero-based assumptions. Starting on my left is Wil Noack, who's a third-year student at RTA, and is totally engaged in the technology world. He has been involved as our data manager and collating material and trying to figure out how it could be distributed and impact his fellow students. As well, he has worked as a production assistant and a post-production supervisor and is involved with production. So this is Wil Noack on to my left. And to his left is Britney Darmanin, who's a fourth-year student at RTA. And Britney focuses her studies on broadcasting and studio production, but she's quite involved with the digital media zone and very engaged there as a videographer, as a marketer, as an editor, and is very committed to that. But at the same time, also a long-term intern at Chum FM, working with Roger Darren and Marilyn's morning show, and has been involved with various forms of broadcasting. To Britney's left is Rob Heydari. Rob completed his degree with honors at the RTA School of Media last year. And Rob has worked for several years as an IT administrator and brings a unique perspective on convergence of technology. He continues today, in addition to working as an associate producer technician at CBC Radio News, he also continues to work with RTA, and we brought him back in as a project manager for something we call the Global Campus Network, which is a unique project that we are involved with in our research that produces high-definition video links via the internet between schools around the world in very cost-effective ways. And through the Global Campus Network, we have various other schools around the world, New Zealand and England and so on, connecting and creating product and collaborative creativity. And so that's Rob. And to Rob's left is Veronica Heringer, who is currently pursuing a master's degree in media production at Ryerson as well, and is a multimedia professional. Came to Canada 5 years ago from Brazil, has had a history of work as a TV programmer and a producer in a Telecine Network and Playboy Brazil. And most recently, she's worked as a digital strategist at Tribal DDB, as well as at the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival, and is now totally committed to the world of content for social media. So ladies and gentlemen, here's your panel. So I want to start with a quick question to all of you, and I'm sure one of the things that, that everybody will want to know. Here you are at this stage of your life as both consumers and as content creators, and so maybe you could just share a little bit, what do you watch? What do you like? How do you engage with media? And how does that affect your thinking about making it in the future? You want to start, Britney?
Sure. I am a big fan of a few specialty shows like Breaking Bad and Californication. But the thing is, I rarely watch them on television. And I will admit that most of what I watch is on my computer. I'm just finding that I want things when I want them, and I want things to be convenient. And I haven't had a cable subscription for a couple of years now, and it is something that I think about. With my generation, this is something we're so comfortable doing, but when I'm in the industry, and very soon, hopefully, how do I produce content and also make money doing so too? So,
Rob, how about you?
I think my story is very similar. I like to watch television programming, so it's shows like Breaking Bad. I like to watch Dallas reruns. But I don't watch them on television. I don't wait for the reruns to show up. I don't wait for it to air on AMC or CBC or whatever station it is. I watch it when I want to. And sometimes that means I've obtained it through what you could call a legitimate channel. And if it's not available that way, then I find alternative means to get it, because the end goal is I want to watch it when I want to watch it. And that sounds really selfish and self-absorbed, but I mean, entertainment is not exactly a selfless medium. People watch entertainment in the first place because they're selfish, they want to entertain themselves. So I think our generation just takes that to the next level, and we say, well, if I want to entertain myself, I want to do it when I want to be entertained, not when someone else has decided to entertain me.
That seems to be a theme going around. Veronica?
I watch all the shows that get canceled. Yeah, it's like if I start liking a show, and I think that the fact is because I don't watch when it's live on television, maybe people don't know that I'm watching, they get canceled. So Community and other shows like that, Being Erica was a big one that I was a huge fan, and word on the street it's that it's getting canceled. There is a social media campaign trying to bring it back, and fans hope to bring it back, but I think that as a consumer, it's starting to be a bad sign, because everything that I start enjoying actually gets canceled. So I might be the part of the population that it's not watching online, but it's really engaging and it's really loyal to the content, but maybe we are not a business or we are a hidden market. I'm trying to figure that out.
Do you watch anything on television?
Well, we had that discussion in class the other day that I said that I watched 4 hours of television, and that it's a month, and that I attribute to live events. Mm-hmm. So it's something, it's live, yeah, for sure. I still have cable because I have a husband who is Canadian, and he can't survive without hockey, so that's the only reason why we have cable. But everything that I watch it's on the PVR, on the internet, yeah.
Wil, how about you?
I enjoy watching children's television, maybe a little too much of it, but I really like how and I'll watch it on traditional television, usually with my little sister or something, but I really like how they've created entire worlds and franchises around those series and shows. You know, they'll have magazines around them, and they'll have you know, action figures around those, and you can't really have those with adult television. And I really enjoy seeing how far they can take it, and now it's going into the new media world as well. You know, there are kids going into the websites that supplement the TV shows, and I think that's where a lot of the world is moving in terms of children's content.
So let's connect that with your relationship with social media and your views about social media. I see Rob doing something.
Live tweets.
You're live tweeting. Last night we had dinner and you were taking pictures and tweeting them out to everybody, and I could not understand that.
I was doing the humble brag, as it's called.
The humble brag, and I was just eating. Veronica, why don't you start? Tell us your thoughts about social media, how it engages you, and how your experience now is engaging you in thinking about content, being a content maker of today and the future.
Sure. I remember when I worked in television 5 years ago, I would talk about Orkut, that was like this huge social network that only happened in Brazil. Like nobody here in North America knows what Orkut is, but everybody was engaging, and Brazilians really took on being engaged on Orkut. And what happened in that network was what's happening on Facebook right now. I watch a lot of things that my friends or my circle is recommending, or things that they're reading. So everything that I'm thinking about producing in the future, I think that will have a huge social media component, like right from the start, like ingrained with the strategy, because I think that it's the only way to engage with my generation. Few people, they engage in different levels, and you know, like it deals with time as well. But for me, social media is a way to have my friends curating the things that I want to watch, and I'm curating the stuff that they should be watching as well, so we can talk, you know. So yeah, I think that like I'm more in the aspect of the strategy. So like everything that I will help to produce in the future, we will actually have a lot of thinking in terms of offering an experience and helping your fans to actually promote your show.
Do you think, Rob, do you think that there would be room for passive media?
I think so. I tend to think of social media almost like a Super Bowl party. And in terms of how it interacts with passive media. We think of it as, oh, it's new, Facebook, Twitter, Orkut, they change everything. They do in some ways, but I think fundamentally they're just allowing us to engage in behavior that people engage in anyway. So it ties to the party aspect, and that we've always liked to watch television and passive media in groups. We'll take passive media and then socialize activities around it. It's you go to the movies with your friends, you watch television shows at a Super Bowl party with your friends. You're always talking about them, and there are different levels of engagement as well. So if we have a Super Bowl party, there's the person in the corner who's not talking. There's the person who won't stop talking about the game. And there's 3 people in the kitchen who are talking about what kind of chips you have. It's the same thing with Facebook or Twitter and passive media. The passive media is still there. It's providing a connective element for all of us. It's giving us common ground. But we're interacting with and around it in all sorts of different ways. I think what Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media sites have changed is that we can do that all the time now. So it sort of ties back into the, I want to do it when I want to do it. Instead of having to plan a party or have people come over or wear pants, I can just do it at my leisure. In my bedroom, I can do it with friends if I want to. I mean, I'm doing it right now on Twitter. It again allows us to do it whenever we want to. It brings more standardized experiences to the ever-present stage, I suppose.
So I want to build a little bit on the I want to do it when I want to do it, and your insinuation earlier that if you can't do it when you want to do it, you're going to find a way to do it in whichever way you can. And we've talked a little bit today in the different panels about piracy, about so on, about monetization, and I just want to engage you in a conversation about piracy. And I'm not asking you to make a confession and get arrested. I just think we can assume that probably the vast majority of people in your demographic and in others pirate. So how does that tie in? And maybe, well, let me try with you. How does that tie in to making a living? I mean, we heard the speech at lunch about selling something, making money. How can you? Is there not a sense of I don't want to say hypocrisy, but conflict that you're trying to create product to make a living, and yet you yourself perhaps are engaging, and what can we do about it? What do you think we should do about it?
Well, it's true. Whenever I walk to HMV, I see it's barren. There's no one there buying content, buying content, period, anymore. So I think we definitely have to be a lot more creative in the way we're going to go about. I feel like the new media world is going to level out all the platforms that we're currently using. It's not right now. Twitter and Facebook, they're sort of supplements to TV shows, and so are the websites. But I think one day they're going to be all on an even level playing field. The people will have to engage them into ARGs, have them really, have them participate in more maybe live events that are based off of the content that we're watching. I know there's some adventure series in the overseas in the UK that are they're experimenting with that sort of thing. They're creating concerts around the music from TV shows, or creating a whole adventure, sort of like a theme park esque element, where people can visit these events and pay money for them. And I think that's where we're moving. We need to be a lot more innovative so that we can bypass the fact that everyone can have files of TV shows on a USB worth $3, and get them out more and get them more engaged and put them in immerse them in the content itself, and that's exactly where we want them. We want them in the live areas. So,
yeah. What do you think?
I had a point. I think our generation, we want to have our cake and eat it too, and we know that we're in a bit of a fantasy land period, and we have the opportunity now, and we're taking advantage of it. And I think we know it's not going to last forever. Controls or regulations will come into place, and free content isn't going to be on the web forever. And I think as we get into the industry, that's something we're going to be working towards building. But you're right, there is a sense of hypocrisy when we're watching content for free. And I do want to give my ratings to these shows that I enjoy so much. The way I justify it is I will purchase those DVDs and give them to my family and friends. So at least I'm contributing some sort of money to this company that has given me so much satisfaction.
Here's the thing, I kind of disagree with that, but I think that we shouldn't be over this whole thing about piracy at some point. You know what I mean? Like, you're producing content. I think that money can be made before you air it. You know what I mean? Like, if you start like worry so much about piracy and who is downloading it and who is replicating it, you're kind of like fighting against your viewers. Like, my generation, we will find ways around it. Like,
so how do you make money before you load it? You produce it. I don't understand what that means.
Well, I'm a big fan of sponsored content. Like,
right.
if you have a big sponsor and you want to show their logo and you want to show me that somehow you endorse that brand, and you're telling your story and I'm having fun, I couldn't care less. Like, I drink pop every single day. If your character is doing that and showing me that can, it just looks more like real life, and maybe you can make some money with product placement.
So you look at sponsorship and product placement as being, and just get the product out there. The guilt's not going to work. The policing is not going to work. Just get it out there.
That's what
Rob,
I
what do you
believe.
think?
We've
the
been
guilt
doing
and
that.
the guilt and policing won't work, because part of it is that, I mean, we act and we talk about this with rhetoric that seems to imply that the internet came in piracy. We don't look at sort of the cultural values that developed that over the past few decades. I mean, part of, I think, why younger people don't have a problem with downloading a television show is because to them it was free anyway. When you pay your $100 a month cable bill, I think that very few people ever associated that with, I'm paying for my television show. They associated the value with the pipe. I'm paying for the box next to my TV. I'm paying for the cable guy who came and hooked that in. I'm paying for someone else to be the technician for my house. Mm-hmm. So they weren't paying for the content.
I'm going to ask you a question. We talked about convenience a little bit and that it's not available. If something's convenient, if something is available, would you think that you and your generation would pay for it?
Yes, but if it's $100 a month.
Right. So for the right price, the idea, the notion of paying.
Yeah.
I mean, the other side is that we only want to pay for exactly what we're consuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of the rejection of the $100 cable bill is I don't want to pay for the History Channel and Slice and the Golf Channel if all I want is space. Or if all I want to watch is Star Trek The Next Generation, I don't want to pay for 16 hours of...
So you're saying if it's not available to you at the right price, and you can steal it...
And quickly, quickly too.
I don't think that price is really as much... Like, certainly price becomes a factor once it gets really high. It still needs to be reasonably affordable, but... I mean, we've demonstrated before piracy was around, if people couldn't afford a $20 CD or movie, they wouldn't have bought that either. Those price points are affordable to people and they'll accept them. I think the difference is that now it has to be extremely convenient. Piracy is so convenient that you have to have legitimate content match that convenience exactly.
I want to shift gears a bit. The other thing that we talked about a lot and we know about is citizen production. Everybody's a producer. Alan Shepard said he was producing on the weekend. Everybody is creating content. So you're going into the field to be professional producers, amongst other things. So A, how does that make you feel? And is there room for a professional producer? Is it not something that everybody should be able to do? Or is there still role? Obviously you think there is. You're pursuing a career. What's the distinction?
The lines have blurred now. I mean, like, anyone can pick up a camera and be able to shoot something really great. We see it on YouTube all the time. And, you know, it's really difficult to sort through what's professional and what isn't. And it's come to the point where we can't even decide how to define those two things, what is professional content and what isn't professional content. So it's becoming more and more difficult to monetize the products that we come out with. And I think, you know, we have to continue to work to make that professional content. There's a lot of pressure on you know, the students and the up-and-coming producers to do that sort of thing. But I mean, when it comes down to it, it's how we really put it out there. It's how we market it. Because the thing about the consumers, when they put out their video products, they put it on YouTube, and that's about it. For us, we have to think of the more innovative ways. We have to think about, okay, how can we attach a music label to it? How can we get the big name actors? And that's exactly what we're learning and what we need to sort of incorporate into our own productions.
Britney?
I agree that anyone can create anything, but I see it as a positive thing because that means there's less barriers for us as new people to the industry to get in. And yes, it might be hard to distinguish between amateur and professional, but that's why we go to school and we learn how to write and shoot and edit, and so that our work does stand out. So to me, I think it's a great opportunity for us, if we don't have experience, to create our own web series, to put our ideas out there and create a fan base, which I think a network would be more willing to give me money or invest in me and my show idea if I've created a fan base for it already on the internet. So,
Veronica, what's the role of fans? We hear a lot about fan culture and engagement, and so should fans be co-creating product with you as a producer in the future?
Well, my opinion is that fans, they should be at least your primary focus group. You know what I mean? You can produce a TV series and at the same time you'll be monitoring all the communities that are being created, the blogs, Twitter feeds, and incorporate that to your story. You know, I think that if you're not doing that and then at some point your show gets canceled, I'm sorry, you kind of asked for it, you know, because we are out there and we are saying what we like, how we want to engage, and sometimes what we are saying might be more innovative and more valuable for your story or for your show than just the ratings, you know, because I think that we grew up in a world that we had to have like big shows and big things, but if the majority of the people are not attached to that brand, you can go to other channels as well and continue telling that story. And we've seen that happening with other type of productions that later on they became mainstream because their friends brought them back, you know. So that's how I see fans.
And if I can add on to what Veronica is saying, I mean, it's a two-way system. We have to, you know, the fans trust us to come up with great stories, and that's why I always believe that content will be king. Or queen.
Well, that brings up another point, though, and this came in on Twitter. Do you think that consumers would want to create, like, as do you think that fans want to co-create their content with us?
They
as
already
well?
are. They already. I mean, we see a lot of, you know, there are some websites out there with, some series websites that will put clips, and you know, fans can create their own trailers for it, and of course, they put them on YouTube. And they're trying to stop that, but I mean, it's a trust system. You know, they trust us to come up with really good content, and we have to keep on coming up with those innovative ideas, and then you know. For us, they dress up in costumes of the characters that we create and go to things like the sci-fi conventions, and that's where a lot of them end up because they buy into the content that we create.
Shifting gears again, you're in an industry that's regulated. It's a regulated industry, Canadian content, and so on and so forth. And I don't think, while there's difference of opinions of the level of regulation, I don't think anybody would disagree that we probably wouldn't have the industry that we have without regulation. How does regulation play into your thoughts? Is it with the walls breaking down, with creativity kind of opening, the barriers are falling? At the same time, I'd just love to get a sense of very quickly where you guys feel. Britney, you want to start off?
Well, my mindset is more based on putting out content on the web. So I do think there is some merit to CanCon and creating positions specifically for Canadians. I mean, that's what we need when we're competing with such strong American networks and American programming. So I do believe there's merit in it. It's hard to comment personally since I've not dealt with you know, creating a show on my own or anything like that. But like I said, I'm more internet-minded and web series-minded, so I tend not to think that I have a lot of restrictions put on me.
What about you, Veronica?
Well, I grew up like loving the internet, you know. Maybe the next generation won't be like me. So I'm completely against regulations. I think that your viewership will out-regulate itself. But I understand that Canada is a smaller market. We are right beside the United States. They have a powerhouse. So I see why the regulation is there, but I'm not sure if we are like just becoming really good about like using the fund that is available to fund our productions and not telling the Canadian stories, or if we are actually telling what it thinks about Canada and actually complying with the regulations, you know. So I debate a lot, like I think that closing the market more than it is closed, it might actually kill the industry.
But I don't think that regulation has to close the market. But the problem with regulation as it stands is it doesn't incentivize making good content. It incentivizes making something quick and cheap to fill your quota. It's based around quotas and about just getting it done so that you can do the stuff you really want to do. And so I almost think that we need to find a way to make the regulation, and get daggers shot at me for this, make the regulations a little tighter to try and, I don't know if you want to call them loopholes, but right now there's so many complexities to these regulations, and it's not doing what we want it to do if the end goal is to produce quality Canadian content that people watch the most, that they watch it more than anything else, and it makes a lot of money because of that. So I think right now the regulations incentivize mediocrity, and we need to try and tighten them up so that that's not the case.
Wow, them's fighting words. I want to end up and then open up to a couple of questions with one last question. So, quality Canadian content, you're going to do it. All four of you are going to be here a few years with the conference. You're going to do it. What is it? What's quality Canadian content to you? What makes it quality, and what makes it Canadian content then?
Being able to, I mean, it's been said before, but being able to tell Canadian stories.
What does that mean? What's a Canadian?
I'm not only interjecting, the shots of the beaver or the hockey game, but really telling the Canadian stories that are going on. We're a very diverse culture. We have the cultural mosaic, and I feel like there needs to be a lot more of that. We hear it on the radio. I hear it all the time, but on television, not as much. I want to see more stories, more scripted dramas that tell the, talk about, discuss the Canadian stories and show how diverse our culture really is. The States do it all the time. They're always showing their flag on TV. So I think we need to show ours and the many the diverse culture that we play host to.
Britney?
Speaking of Canadian stereotypes, I'm over them. I'm not into the beaver, the hockey stick. I think that's so just like long ago. I think Canada is interested in the world around us, because that's what we are. We're so many cultures in one country, and I think that's also why it's hard to define Canadian stories. So from what I've looked into, Canadians love to travel. Canadians love to see what's going on in the world around them. So I think, to me, that's what I foresee myself working on in the future.
Good. Rob?
I feel like sometimes when we're trying to define what Canadian programming is, we worry about if external viewers can identify it as Canadian, and that's where the icons of the beaver and the hockey stick sort of being tacked onto a show come from. And I think it's just important that a Canadian viewer can view that and say, I see myself in this story. And so that's going to ties into diversity, especially given our modern demographics. So I think as long as a Canadian is watching a program and saying, yeah, this reminds me of me.
What's a program?
What's what?
When you say a program, what do you mean by a program in your world now?
I think that can be anything, you know, that can be a reality show, that can be a drama, that can be a 5-minute cat video, that can be a half-hour show. I think the beauty of the internet is that it's opened up what a program is to almost anything.
How about you, Veronica? As the new and proud Canadian, what do you think Canadian stories and Canadian programs, what are you going to do for us in terms of storytelling?
Oh,
That's what kind of product?
Big responsibility.
It is. It's all on your shoulder.
I wish to see characters like myself on the screen, you know, on TV or on mobile or whatever. You know, I wish I could see more people with accents so I could see myself reflected somehow. But I really agree with Britney. Like, I want to see things that happens to everybody living in the big and small cities of Canada, you know. I want to understand what people in the interior are actually doing, and people in the cities, where are the discussions. I want to see politics being discussed in TV shows, and I want us to actually innovate in that point, because we are trying to mimic another culture, trying at the same time conveying Canadian values, and we are not adding anything to the discussion, you know, and what is the Canadian way of life? I hadn't figured that out, and I love television, you know, and it's hard to see that on television.
Thank you. Time for a couple of quick questions. Anybody out there want to, I can't see at the moment, because anybody want to ask any questions? Anybody? Yeah.
Hello?
It's okay, maybe you can say it. I can repeat it, yeah.
So after you graduate as a television producer or media content producer, how much would you be willing to work for? And the second part of the question is, how much would you be willing to pay for an hour of your favorite show to download quickly?
What was the first part of the question? How much what?
First question is, as a producer, how much would you be willing to work for? And the second part of the question, as an hourly rate, and the second part of the question is, how much would you be willing to pay for an hour of your favorite show, if it was a quick, easy download?
Okay, anybody want to try to tackle that? I have a feeling the first one's a bit of a trick question.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
20%
I'll
of B&C.
take. Are you going for it?
No,
Go ahead.
Well, how much I'm willing to work for, I understand everybody who is here in the room, we are passionate about what we do, and I understand that. And when I was younger, I was pulling out 14 hours of work a day. Now I'm not willing to slave anymore. You know, I think that at some point it's like between your passion and your health, and sometimes you need to choose. So I think that, yeah, would be a lot, but not like slavery.
You want to earn a living.
Yeah.
yeah.
Anybody else want to check how much would you work for?
Well, I'm in the process of applying for jobs, and the numbers that I'm hearing being tossed around as an entry-level position is, you know, somewhere around 40,000 if I'm lucky. And that does seem a little bit tight to live in downtown Toronto with. Yeah. But at the same time, having worked in the digital media zone and being surrounded with entrepreneurs, that's also in the back of my mind. You know, if I can't make a proper living by creating my own ideas through a corporation or whatever, there's always the option of being an entrepreneur in a sense, or being an independent producer. So.
By the way, just to add, this is after a year or so, at least already, of internship, either for no wage or that's already part of the educational process, or minimum wage. So they've, what about paying? I like that question. What would you think is a reasonable rate right now for
I think for
an hour?
like $5 for an hour show that's good is probably pretty fair. I mean, the problem with that price right now is that we're sort of in this weird in-between zone where, you know, broadcast revenues are declining, but on-demand revenues are not going up fast enough. So there's this revenue gap, I think, that's there.
Right.
And I mean, I don't have any statistics for that, but like we're not at a point where everyone is going to, you know, bypass a broadcast distribution and buy it from wherever, iTunes, Amazon.
But $5, as much as that for an hour of television.
I think people would pay that.
If we're paying 99 cents for one song now already, right?
And they pay $15 for a 2-hour movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Like people will pay, if it's good. Is it like people are not going to pay $5 for an hour of Storage Wars? You know.
The question is, there's a relationship between the amount of money you will make in the industry and the amount of money you're willing to pay for that content. So if what you guys were saying earlier, which is certainly valid, that you don't want to pay for anything online, then no one's going to be able to sell their television shows. That's the bottom line. If all the content is free, the industry will not make any money, and students will come out and they'll have to work for very little.
But that doesn't change.
There's a relationship between the two.
That doesn't change what people's behavior are. Like everyone in this room, every member of the CMPA, everyone who touches producing media in some way can say, we're not going to do that. We're going to tie what we want to charge people to how much money we make. And we would be a drop in the ocean of content consumers. The reality is that 99% of people are behaving to, or going to behave towards media the way that we've described at the beginning. There's a generational shift happening. So what we say about what we want to charge or what we want to work for.
And just to be clear, I don't think I heard that you don't want to pay. I just heard you will pay. In fact,
we are willing to pay.
They are willing to pay.
We just want it to be convenient.
They just want it to be convenient.
Yeah.
Hello? I think that's valid, and I think iTunes proved that guilt actually does work, and it's not a drop in the bucket. People are willing to pay for content, and the musicians are very happy about that, because before iTunes, essentially everything was being stolen.
Yeah. Room, time for one more question. Anybody else want to add anything? Yeah, this question right there. Go ahead.
If you can hear me, great.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the world that you're graduating into and comparing it to your predecessors of a decade or 2 decades ago. And a decade or 2 decades ago, you could go to a Much Music or a CBC or a CTV because the broadcasting industry is growing and there are huge opportunities that I don't imagine you have, at least not to the same extent. And then we go forward and we talk about the trends and we talk about viewing shifting from Canadian broadcasters to Google and Facebook and Netflix. And you can see a picture where, if you will, the Canadian ownership of the aggregation space, which is always important, diminishes. And so my question to you is, does that worry you? Does the fact that you are more likely to work for a Google than a CTV bother you, or does it excite you, or how do you look at that world?
No,
Veronica, go ahead.
It doesn't bug me at all. Like, you know, I think that broadcasters, they need to start thinking about their distribution model. And if I was in that position to make the decision where I want to be as a broadcaster, I would be everywhere. I would do my best to establish relationships with my audience in all platforms that I could think of. And I would test drive every single platform. So if Google becomes a network, I think that for generations to come, it's another employer, you know? Like, I think we're looking forward, telling stories or creating like really good content. So our employer, at the end of the day, needs to provide that to us. as the next generation. That's how I feel
Anybody
about
else
it.
want to add to that? Are you concerned, Will? Yeah.
When it comes down to it, I mean, Google is not a broadcaster. We're going to have to adapt to, how to create content for the web and no longer for television. That means changing all of our skills from writing to editing. And, we're going to have to rethink the ways of how we're going to manage the teams that it takes to actually put that content out there, because it's not going to be the same. So we're going to have to continuously adapt to figure out how to make innovative content that people can watch on the web.
I mean, I don't think anyone who graduated from RTA or from any broadcast school in the 70s or 80s expected to be working for the telephone company this year. Mm-hmm. So I mean, these changes have been happening over the whole history of our industry, and it's just a little more unfamiliar this time around, I guess.
Anybody else? One quick one? Well, that's good. We're just about done anyway. I'd like to thank you very much and thank our panelists. Have a good evening.